Um, Embracing failure, how I learned to love mistakes. Elizabeth Rosenzweig, right?
Rosenzweig.
Wow, that's
Sorry.
the full name, yes.
Yes.
So the floor is yours.
Great. Well, so based on past experiences with slides, I'm going to go ahead and show the one or two slides I have at the end.
Okay.
Not that I'm afraid to fail, but I just like to mitigate the risk. So, let's see, I'm a consultant. I've been doing consulting for about 15 years. And before that, I worked at large companies like Eastman Kodak is one example. Maybe you've heard of them. They don't really exist in their new form. And I've also been teaching as an adjunct professor at Bentley University and now at Brandeis in human-centered design, user-centered design programs. But the most exciting thing that I do is run World Usability Day. And I know I see a few of you on here who have been involved. So actually, the idea with World Usability Day was started in 2005. And it was basically what we just heard from Robert, which is UX can save the world. So if you want to learn more about World Usability Day, I just put that in the chat. But I think I'll just jump right into talking about failure first. So why did I say embracing failure? So actually I wrote a book, Successful User Experience Strategies and Roadmaps, and I've got a whole chapter on failure. I did learn over time that it was something that I could feel good about and not bad about. As most of us, I was raised thinking failure was something to be ashamed of. And in fact, I remember my first job at a graduate school, the company I worked for launched a campaign that said, do it right the first time. They even gave out pens. And so that reinforced the notion that failure was bad. But as I worked in the field, and my background is design and photography, I thought that failure wasn't actually such a scary thing. It was more like we were iterating and learning. And I thought a lot about user-centered design, which is all about understanding things you don't know and then learning from that. So inherently, UX is also about incorporating failure, because what is failure? It's doing something that you don't know. That you don't even know you don't know sometimes. I mean, sometimes it is like you do know, and we've heard a couple of these, but in a lot of cases, it's just you're figuring out as you go. So I did start to think maybe failure is just part of this way of looking at things. Maybe it's not, okay, this is bad because it's a fail and this is good because it's a success. Maybe it's more about how do we think about the world. So that brings me to the first story I'm going to tell, which is not a story of mine, but I think it's important because it is based on how do you decide it's a failure? How do you decide it's success? It's what you're bringing to the experience. It's not the experience saying to you, well, that is a failure. I mean, sometimes it is, you lose money, you lose a job, you get divorced. Obviously those things, the society has told us it's a failure. But maybe I have found sometimes they lead to something I would have never thought of. So here's the story. It's called The Story of the Taoist Farmer. Some of you may have heard of it. And this is the story that made me literally think about embracing failure. So there was a farmer who lived in ancient China. He owned a horse. His neighbors said, you're so lucky you have a horse to pull the cart. And he said, maybe I'm lucky, maybe I'm not. One day he didn't latch the gate properly and the horse ran away, and his neighbors came and said, oh, that's terrible news, such bad luck. And he said, maybe. A few days later, the horse returned bringing with it 6 wild horses. Wow, how fantastic. You're so lucky, his neighbors said. Maybe, said the farmer. The following week, the farmer's son was breaking in one of the wild horses and fell and broke his leg. Oh no, his neighbors cried, such bad luck, all over again. And the farmer just said, maybe it's bad luck, maybe it's not. The next day, the monarch of the land decided that he was conscripting young men for the war. So soldiers came and took away all the young men in the village, but the farmer's son was left behind. You're so lucky, the neighbors cried. Maybe, said the farmer. So the story to me tells me it's really more about how we interpret things. And maybe something that seems like a disaster turns into an opportunity. Maybe a fail is a win later. The idea is there's no real intrinsic opportunities. There's no threats. I mean, sure, there's threats, and I'm not trying to belittle. We have COVID, we have war, we have all sorts of horrible things. But if we're not talking about that, right? We're talking about like our work experiences and life. Maybe it's really more about how we choose to respond. And, you know, let's face it, there's only so much control we have over the world, but we have control over ourselves. So this brings me to my UX fail story. So for 10 years, up until last September, I worked at the Bentley University, and it's got a user experience center where they still do, it's just they're a little smaller now, where they do consulting projects for clients. And there's also, and so, okay, there's a sound that's not coming from me, but that's okay. So at the UXC, like I said, it's a consulting company inside a business school, and I often work on projects with a team of about 2 to 5 design research associates who are also graduate students in the program. So sometimes there would even be students who would be in my class, but also on my team working. I love that because it gave me an opportunity to be a mentor, and I found that I learned a lot myself. So one summer, my team and I were working on a consumer electronics test back in the days where we were in the lab. We were running a series of 10 sessions, and we had a physical prototype. And the company was fabulous because they actually gave up, you know, they had one of their industrial designers just sit with us for the first few days of the test to make sure the prototype was working. And, you know, it would break sometimes. It was a physical object. And to be honest with you, I thought that the first few days were going really, really well. We had contracted to run 10 sessions with a minimum of 8 over 3.5 days in the lab. And the first 3 days, like I said, went really well. Stakeholders from the company came to observe. Some were online, some were there. The client seemed real happy. And I thought we had done really, really well. I sometimes have my assistants or the graduate students do some of the moderating. Some of them are really, really good. They've done other work. Even I'll do an answer to something I saw in the chat. Some of my students would have come in, let's say, with other skills like graphic design, psychology, or something, and we worked on their transferable skills. So some of it was moderating. So a lot of them were real great at moderating, and some just needed some practice. We had done practicing in the class. I'm telling you all this because the first 3 days went really well, right? The client was happy. We ran 8 of the 10 sessions in those 3 days. And remember, I only needed a minimum of 8. So for the 4th day, where I had 2 sessions left, I started to relax. And I think, and maybe Robert touched on this too, like maybe I was so experienced, I maybe dropped my guard down, relaxed a little too much. And so, you know, I had one of my assistants do the 9th session. They did a great job. I didn't see none of the stakeholders came to watch the session, and then they weren't even online. So it was time to do the 10th session, which I was thinking more of as progress, as like an extra session. And so I thought this was a great time as a mentor to let, you know, one of my assistants moderate. They'd never moderated before. I've seen them moderate in class. This was a great time for them to start. And we had about 15 minutes till the session. So I said, team, I'm going to take a quick break. I'll come back in 10 minutes and then we'll start on time. And so just, you know, make yourself familiar with the mod guide and I'll be right back. Oh, and I should note that the only way the client was communicating with me was email. Okay, so I came back and it turned out the team started the session early because the participant was there. And while I was startled because I came back and the session was happening, I thought, how bad can this be, right? Okay, so that's my like script plant for telling you how bad it's gonna get. So what happened is the session was running 5 minutes, and remember the client's only talking to me through email, and suddenly my email explodes. It is blowing up. Apparently the most important stakeholder, the vice president of the unit, had decided that the only session he was going to watch was that one. And he got on and it was already happening. So he was furious and he was very angry at the team that that had hired me. And so they started emailing me like they were furious. And, it was in play, right? I'm not going to, am I going to go in and get them to stop and restart? No, that was not the call I did. So the session went and the student was actually nervous. So he made a mistake and he broke the prototype. I mean, it was really bad. And my email is exploding, right? And I'm trying to respond and trying to say, at first I thought, let me just tell them it's not so bad and we already have the data, but that wasn't the problem. The vice president was watching. That was the problem. So I finally first had to calm myself down. The session ends. The participant we say goodbye to. I sit the team down and I said, you guys really screwed up badly and I'm very upset. I said, but what's more important is the client is really upset. And this is someone we worked with, we have a good relationship. And of course, because, they all, I could see the collapse in their body, right? All of them. And I said, you should never start early. I probably was a little more emotional. And, I said, I told you to wait. You didn't wait. And I'm taking a break. I'm going to my office and I'll be back in a few minutes. And so in my office, I tried to find a phone number for the client because I realized I just needed to call, I just got to fix this relationship. So there was no phone number. I couldn't find a phone number. I don't know why they only liked email. I had sent an email saying that I was terribly sorry, that I will give you a free session. I'll give you 2 more free sessions if you want. We can throw out the data from this. And, but no response came from my email. So I finally found the company headquarters phone number, called them. They had a, company directory. I found my contact. I left her a voicemail. And I said pretty much the same thing about, I was really sorry. This was my mistake. I was the head of the team. It was my mistake. I want to make it right. We'd like to schedule 1 or 2 other sessions, and we will schedule one at the convenience of the vice president. Whenever he's available, we will make the next session. So that is how it played out. I did 1 more session at the convenience of the vice president. I had a lot of chats with the client, a lot, and we're friends to this day. The conversation ensued where she said, you know what? I can't expect everyone to be perfect. I would like things to go well, but what you showed me is that we can also repair something. So the fact that I made the effort to call her, didn't just stick to the email. I apologized. I said how I was going to make it right, and I found a solution. She came back. We're friends to this day. And then I went back to the students and sat down. And here's the real kicker for me. I went through everything with them and told them what I thought they should do better. And then I realized at the very end, there was this question inside me. Was there something I could have done better as a manager, as a mentor? And so I asked them that question. To me, that was being brave. I kind of didn't really want to know, to be honest with you, but okay. I said, team, what did I do? And they said, you could have been clearer when you told us not to start. We thought you were casually saying that, but you should have said, don't start until I get back. And so now to this day, anytime I'm doing sessions where some participant comes early or someone wants to start early, I reach out to the stakeholders. I was like, is it okay if I start early? So I learned something too, as a leader, as a mentor, and as a professor. Mistakes are not just always one side. You got to look at what you do also, and then we have this iterative experience. So my last, I just have one. I'm just going to share one, just one slide, because it tells you what I think, where we should, where I like to leave it. So here's my solution. So first of all, here's my book. Here's a picture of my book, and there's a chapter about failing. So here's what I think. Failure happens. Just like we have to get over it, right? It happens. You've got to accept that it happens. When it happens, maybe have a little bit of feelings, go to your office, go to your room, scream, and then you got to get over it. You got to move on, pick yourself up, figure out what the opportunity is, how you can learn, and then move on. So that's my stories. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Wow, that was amazing. Thank you for the insights. Robert is clapping. We wish we could hear you. Yes, I'm
Thank you.
seeing.
Yes.
I'm seeing
Thank
everyone is clapping. Anyone has a question? Yes, Robert, tell me. Go for it.
Oh, I did not have a question. I was just clapping.
Ah,
you.
that was, oh, I saw the thing. Yeah, okay.
Right.
I thought that you're raising your hand. But can you relate? Did you have something similar happen to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think on the slide that you just shared, Elizabeth, that shit happens, failure happens, things happen. I cannot agree more. But I would even take it to the place. It's good that this happens because this is how we can evolve. And this whole idea that we have oftentimes also in leadership, that things can run smoothly. It's just an idea. The world is messy. And we should embrace this as UXers.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Fatima had a question, maybe.
I just want to say that it is a wonderful story about leadership.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you, Yaron.
That
Thank
is
you.
it.
Fatima,
Thank
did
you.
you want to say something or we move on? Okay, we move on. Our next